Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Welcome to the Wicked Radio Network.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen, the hostess with the mostest, as usual, but not as always, because, of course, I was not here last week. With me is Brian and Henno. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah.
And I will let you get everybody in the audience know up front that since Brian and I are in the lovely state of Michigan, we are both suffering from sinuses, so please excuse any sneezing, sniffling, and or coughing. We will try to keep it off mic whenever possible, but it is the height of allergy fun in Michigan.
Yep.
Allergy fun shortly followed by bug fun.
Oh, they're saying that the algal bloom's going to be lower this year, so...
Ooh, maybe
finally, yeah.
We'll have drinking water? What?
That'll just be a little less green.
Yeah, pretty much.
Delicious. I guess, you know what, I can't even joke about that because it could be so much worse. You know, just a couple hours north of us in Flint, it's so much worse. So, you know. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, be very thankful for all your drinking water, everyone, because it's so can be taken away very quickly, as poor Flint has seen.
Right.
But with that being said, who wants to start? How are you guys' weeks?
Got anything good, Brian?
Crickets.
Not really. My week's been pretty boring, honestly. I haven't really done a whole lot. It's been really similar to last week. A lot of just not much, and I'm just kind of finding myself reverting to, before I started this new antidepressant, just really kind of, introverting, you know, just really hardcore introverting. And the more and more I'm thinking about it, I think I mentioned this last week. Like, I had never really put a lot of weight into how much the weather affects my depression. And I don't mean like the seasonal, you know, like sad, like seasonal. Jeez, I can't even say it. It's like seasonal affective disorder or depression. I'm meaning more as though, like, as the pressure outside changes, it seems to really affect my depression and my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Plus it's been rainy almost every day, and with that comes sinus issues for me. And when my sinuses are awful, all I feel like doing is laying around, which feeds into the depression, and it's just, it all kind of feeds into a cycle. And so it's been really tough for me to get out of bed a lot of these days. So it's not been a real fun week for me. And then, on top of it, it's also been kind of weird how this past week, a lot of people may listen to this and just be like, oh, this is ridiculous. But if you're an introvert, this will make a lot of sense. Is that in the last week, Twitter had an update that has bricked a lot of people's iPhones. And it's crashed other apps. Like, there's something about it that it's like, now when you go to use it, it's lagging the app big time, and it's making the app really hard to use for a lot of people. And again, as an introvert, I tend to talk to people in groups through Twitter, and I can just do normal Twitter stuff because I have TweetBot on my phone that I've had for a long time also. I kind of quit using it, but I had it. So I can do most of my normal Twitter stuff that way, but you can't do group DMs through TweetBot. So the groups that I've been kind of becoming, where I've basically been putting myself out there and getting to know people a little bit in these groups, I've now had to restart Twitter 8, 10, 12 times before I can access these groups. And then I'm way behind in the conversation. And when I go to make a comment, it freezes again. So I can't take part in these conversations as much. And like I said, as an introvert, it really sucks because this is kind of some of my socializing. So when I'm already kind of feeling introverted overall, and I feel myself pulling in a little bit, now one of the ways that I kind of keep myself from pulling in another way is kind of being taken away from me, and like I said, I know it kind of sounds ridiculous, but as I pointed out to Henno last week, sometimes when you're like I am, these are the ways that people reach out to people, and so it really sucks for people like us, and it's making other apps on my phone run really slow too. So, my overall performance of my phone really stinks. So if I go to do other stuff, like for the podcast, when I go to retweet things or post stuff for the podcast, it's slowing that effectiveness down too, and it's becoming frustrating, but yeah, on the upside, I go see my my psychiatrist tomorrow, and hopefully they'll be upping my antidepressant. So, hopefully that'll be the next step up, and hopefully that'll start making a little bit of a difference there. And, so yeah, so that's been my week. Well,
I'm going to challenge you because you've been doing this for about 2 weeks now, you said, and nothing's getting better. I'm going to challenge you to try to write down at least one thing a day that makes you happy or is a win for you. And try to just to kind of help you focus, because I think one day is turning into another day, turning into another day.
Yeah.
They're not differentiating themselves, so it's becoming kind of a blah.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you try to focus and find at least one thing, one positive out of the day, that it'll start breaking those days up a little bit.
Yeah.
And you'll start feeling a little bit more like living, not just existing.
Right. That's actually, it's interesting because after we're done with our week recap here, I want to talk about something else. There's actually, that kind of leads into that a little bit. So that makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
Yeah. Shoot, I was going to say something else there and I forgot what it was now. Oh, well. So, yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Henno?
Let's see. I was supposed to have a little weekend getaway last weekend, and that didn't happen because I woke up totally ill on Friday.
Oh,
which
no.
sucked.
Now, did you have a license to ill, sir? Sorry, that was terrible. That was so bad. I'm apologizing to everyone for that. Carry on.
No, I would say I took the license. Because Sharon and I were going to go to Lava Hot Springs and meet up with a bunch of people, and it's a fun, funky town, and with the hot springs and all the buildings, and it's just a neat place, and really looking forward to it. Had the hotel room, and I mean, the minute I woke up, I'm like, I have a sore throat, and I was like, this is not normal. I could just tell right away, and I got my head kind of hurt, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually sick right now. And the idea of being in a car for 3.5 hours or however long it takes to get, about 3.5 hours, was like absolutely unappealing, and, couldn't change the hotel room. So, at least Sharon went and had a little getaway. Work had been stressful for her, so she could use the get out of town. And it was kind of funny because that's what we were talking about last week. Is just I've had really low motivation and this and that, and then this happened last weekend. I'm like, well, I'm sick, so I'll do what I can. So it was funny is in all that I actually worked on. I was telling Brian earlier, I was working on this guitar thing that I've always wanted to learn how to play, and I actually recorded it over the weekend. And it's funny to be like not motivated yet still, find some desire to do something that I haven't been doing a lot of, which is any kind of music. I've been actually kind of enjoying playing a little bit. But by Monday, basically Monday, I was finally feeling better. But I'm going to take your advice, Jen, about what you just suggested for Brian, because I feel like I'm one half day of accomplishments away from being feeling normal again. I've had it was like I have been doing so much of nothing lately that every time I do something and get it done, it gives me a little lift. When the baby steps start to build and you can feel the momentum building, okay, I'm heading back to normal again. And I was talking to my he's not a coworker, but he works for the health club, and he and I are kind of both in the same place where it's just like, all right, I'm in a funk, I'm in a period where I don't feel highly motivated, but I'm gonna go with it and come out of it when it feels right. I'm not gonna force myself.
Yeah.
And the thing that has been helping is kind of consciously saying, okay, I want to, I think I'll make a list and I'll see if I can knock off. I got lists everywhere. I'll make my list and see if I can knock off one at a time. Even with the podcast I do, Gotham Lights, I had some computer problems and I just didn't feel like dealing with them. So all the episodes were 5 days released late. And I usually release them the next day. And I just had no desire to sit down and do any work. And speaking of social network, I have been just disconnected. I've done the minimum required, but pretty much when I'm not feeling well, I check out. I'm just give me a book, give me, something. Mm-hmm. But so it's like I said, I feel like if on my day off Friday, if I really rock a few things, I think it might. I feel like I'm the motor's ready. It just needs to be primered a little bit. I just need that right little. You
just need someone to just behind you, just push you the right way.
Just the right way.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'll be moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So left to your own devices, you're pointing yourself toward the couch, and you're
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and you're you need someone to just turn you the other way and shove.
I'm at that turning point right now. So.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels good. It's when I do. I know when I get into this, I'm just like this. I ebb and flow. I have my little cycles, and I'm better at accepting it. And the other thing that's kind of been going on for me is the still kind of processing life change in a way. And one thing that hit me this last week is, I'm still working on paying off my debt. And I went, I'm almost going to be 50. I don't want to be that age and have the debt that I have right now. Like, it was one of those like real blast in my head moments of clarity that I went, I don't, I'm doing fine right now, but it's something that I don't want to take into, that hump. I get to the other side of that hill. I just had this sudden feeling of like, yeah, I don't want that. So part of what I have been doing to motivate myself is I've been selling stuff. I'm just like, all right, if I'm not going to play live music, I don't need this stuff, so I'm going to start selling it.
Yeah.
And, and that kind of thing. But it was a real weird. It was a pretty profound epiphany. A little, I guess, I've done a good job of ignoring, because if I actually focus on the amount of debt that I still have to get rid of, it can really bum me out.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't look at it too much. I do enough. I make sure that I'm aware and everything. I don't ignore it, but I don't focus on it. And in doing so, it also gives me that ability to kind of like, oh, it's, it's that stuff that's in a box in the basement.
Right.
And like for some reason last week I opened the lid on that box and went, whoa.
Right.
Wow. That got rotten.
Yeah.
Fast.
Let's get this lid back on this.
Yeah. And pick this thing up and start moving it out or something. So yeah. And that's the one thing I'm really trying to do right now is, since I do feel like I'm in a place to transition, is I want to do things that are positive for myself and not. I need to do that because I'm a delicate flower right now. It's very fragile.
Right. We all are. We all are. Yeah.
And like just the wrong thing. Like if life's me right now, can't say I'm going to do it with a lot of dignity. I'm on that edge of not a lot of, you guys have gotten to know me. I'm pretty half glass full. I really try to look at solutions but I know I'm at that point, so I don't need to tempt fate right now.
Right. Yeah.
So. Right. Yep. Absolutely.
But I think that's a great idea. I think I do need to write something every day. And that'll be a great baby step is that's like, if I have a list of things and I just say, okay, knock one of these off today, knock one off.
Yeah.
And that's really, I need to definitely take my own advice as well. And, the reason I wasn't here last week, I wasn't on the podcast last week, is, there's a lot of extra stressors happening at work. And I found out something that I guess I knew, but I hadn't really paid too much attention to before now, which is when I'm put under stress, I sleep. And I sleep excessive amounts of sleep. And I guess it's my way of hibernating, is because I was literally coming home from work. I'd come home from work around 4:30. I'd eat dinner, watch a little TV, in bed by 8, get up at 6. So I was getting quite ample amounts of sleep and would sleep almost the entire time. And, hibernate. I hibernated. And I don't necessarily think that was the best thing because by doing that, I really shrunk my world down.
Yeah.
And my world became work.
Right.
And work is where the stress was. So my world became stress. Now, if in hindsight, I would have forced myself to do something after work, go exercise, take a walk down by the lake, listen to the waves crash for a while. If I would have forced myself to do things other than hibernating and sleep, I really feel that the stressors from work wouldn't have been so rough on my system, because I would have been able to put a better perspective on it.
Yeah. That could be like, maybe instead of sleeping, maybe some of that time might have been better as a like meditation time.
Exactly.
Or something. I don't know. I'm just,
reading a book.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything like that. Spending time with people that I enjoy.
No, that's a terrible idea. But
but you might not have a choice in this.
Yeah.
There are actual, when Angela and I were talking a lot about the fight or flight response and brain chemicals and neurochemicals. And especially, she focused a lot on cortisol because it has a lot of effect on your physical body. But I had found some other studies where they have recently found that there's a neurochemical that it helps regulate your sleeping. It's basically one of the things that helps you get up in the morning. Like, this chemical has to fire and to get you up in the morning. It's also the thing that is lacking in a lot of people that have narcolepsy. And so that's why they just crash out. And that just like any other physical or brain chemistry, when we go into fight or flight mode, things can go haywire. And that this neurochemical can have like the effect, it can almost be like the ADHD deal where you're already hyperactive and we're going to give you more uppers and you're going to crash. And like this same thing goes, is where you have stress, you go into the stress response, your body starts producing so much of this stuff that it actually does kind of like a freak out, and you fall asleep and you sleep. And that it is possible that, because the other thought was that I saw was that a lot of, because I have the same thing. When I get into stress, I find myself sleeping a lot, that kind of thing.
I do too.
It's the way that our brains need to, you've just given your brain a lot of memory work to do. It has to do a lot of processing, and it says, well, I know how we process the best. Done.
Yeah.
And so these things might work together in tandem, because a lot of this stuff is real. I've noticed that it's a lot of recent information, like within the last 10 to 20 years, that they've finally been doing some of this. Well, it goes along with the idea that they're doing more, because of antidepressants and that kind of stuff, they're doing a lot of brain chemistry research.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're learning a lot more about these neurochemicals. So you may be just one of those people that, given that level of stress, that, that chemical gets out of whack and you're out.
Yeah.
Because it really it's amazing. Because I feel great the next day, obviously, because I just had a full night's sleep.
Well, that's actually a question I was going to ask you, because that's important. Because if you slept all that and you woke up and you were exhausted still, that would be,
there you have it.
Yeah. That's similar to like, are you getting restful sleep, or are you essentially blacking out? No, and I am getting good restful sleep and stuff, and I do feel better in the morning. So at least there is that with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And last week I was training and being trained at the same time, which was part of the reason it was so stressful, is because my brain was taking in a whole bunch of new information and also outputting a bunch of information. So I was trying to do both processes at the exact same time, which is very difficult to try to manage all of that. So I know I was doing a lot of that. So it was just, I recognized the fact that, I needed to hibernate, and that's what I did. I didn't even go to the grocery store because the grocery list was just too much for me to handle.
Right.
It was just...
I'm not going to lie. The other side of this is, this sounds a lot like me when I get to a certain point. Like when I hit a certain level, essentially, where my body goes, okay, you've hit that overstimulation point. You need the recharge. Because if I don't, I spiral. And that's kind of like when you're saying this, that's like, it sounds exactly like when you said that part about the grocery list, that's exactly what it is. Like I will lay in bed and I will look at something and go like, I should get up and take a shower. Nope. That sounds like too much today. Well, I should get out of bed. at least put on clothes. Nope, that sounds like too much. I'm just going to lay here, and like it's going down, like it starts at one level. It's like, well, let's tick it down. Is that still too much? Okay, let's go one more down. And like, okay, where can we compromise? Is this still okay? Okay, let's do this, So, yeah.
And it was an interesting week. And, this week started out very similarly because the person was still in town doing the training, so I was still learning stuff. Today was the first day that I wasn't learning anything new, and I was actually able to apply the stuff that I had just learned. So I think the combination of all of that helped to just alleviate a lot of that stress, and it made things feel a lot better. So today was a fairly good day, and I'm still sleepy, but not as bad. And I'm looking forward to the next few days because I think it's going to get even better as I go throughout the week.
Right.
Mm. Now, do we still have you, Hanno? Because my Skype is acting funny.
Yeah, mine too. So.
Everything sounds fine to me.
Okay, as long as we got everybody, we're good here.
Exactly. That's all that matters.
Oh, yeah, your video just went bye-bye.
Yeah.
I can still hear you. So
that's so weird.
Okay,
yeah, everybody's at the same time, like all the video cut out. So like I don't see Henno anymore. I see Jen now and I see me, but it's like grayed out. It's weird.
Start mine, yeah, I do.
That's so odd. Okay. Anyway, so
Skype go, yay!
Yeah, I think that was a really valid question about that. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we do need sleep, but it's how do you feel after you've had it all?
Very much.
I know
that's
that
a good question.
Yeah, the days that I had real crash and burns where I would sleep for 3 days straight, it's like I'd sleep all night long, lift my head up and be just like, no,
yeah,
yeah. And that was when I was deep in a down.
Yep.
I mean, it was like the weight of my head was unbelievable. But I have noticed that where I've had those like you're talking about, you have stress, because I think I've always had that kind of a reaction that if I have, and I'm not talking about physically tired, I'm talking about mental, I'm talking about a braining day where you just start yawning, and you're just like, oh, I'm so tired, just because you've been worked. And I think, and from, what I've read is that's your body's reaction. It's like, okay, we need to recharge. We've used all the braining power we have today.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably a safe thing because, the old me would have picked up a bottle, because I would have been like, oh, rough day, I'm going to have a drink. Well, that would have turned into a lot. Because the other thing that I learned a lot about is it was an interesting study. I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it might have been actually in New York Times where I read it. But it talked about that we only have so much willpower.
Yeah.
And that there's a point where our ability to refuse that, whatever that is, dwindles as the day goes on. And it was really a cool read.
That's an interesting idea, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we're less able to refuse the ice cream, that extra chocolate, those extra drinks or whatever it is. And that if we put ourselves in those situations, we're more likely to dive into something. And then you don't get a good night's sleep. Then you wake up and you don't feel refreshed, and you just cheated your brain out of what it needed.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I think it sounds to me that you did exactly what your body wanted to do and needed to do.
Yeah.
You turn out feeling good afterwards.
Right. And that's the key is, it'd be different if, like Henno said, I go through those kind of things, like those days I've mentioned where I feel like I lift my head up, and as he said, your head is just too heavy. And like I said, I'll look and, I should get up and take a shower and what? Nope. I should get up and put on nope. I should get up. Nope. And I will go back to sleep and I'll be like, wow, I slept 13 hours today, and I'll actually get up and be like, I'm still exhausted. And whether it's you slept too long or this or whatever, I didn't really sleep. It's basically what my body did was time travel to avoid the negative thoughts, to try to it's just an avoidance. That's all. Simply put, it's an avoidance for me.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that isn't what a person's doing, if you're waking up and you feel refreshed, you're able to get out of bed, that's fine. I can't imagine that there's, bad. Like I said, like Heno said, it seems like that's what your body needed then. You needed a good recharge. Maybe you were running too low, for a little while there and just needed a good recharge, and
yeah, and that's it's what I needed, and thankfully I had the capabilities of doing that.
Yes.
Which is nice. Mm-hmm. And and it does make me question, because there is potential for children on the horizon for me, and if I do decide to go down that path, how that will affect how I deal with these things will completely change. Like, I won't be able to sleep for 13 hours and, and take a big time. So, it does pose that question, that, I've been tossing around in my mind about mental illness, dealing with mental illness and children. Mm. It's a whole nother world to explore.
Yeah.
And not to say that it can't be done or shouldn't be done or anything like that. It's just different.
Right.
It's 100% capable. People do it every single day. Mm-hmm. But it would be a complete lifestyle change for me.
Yeah.
And navigating that would be very different.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just some interesting questions for me.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's funny because you mentioned, when you mentioned to me about writing stuff down, a positive or a thought or a win or, something to that effect or something that makes you happy every day. I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and it's called The Tim Ferriss Show. And there's a lot of his episodes that are very much, at his core, his podcast is about getting the people who are the best at what they do and getting inside their head and figuring out why they're the best they are at what they do. Like, what makes them successful? Like, what is it in their processes that makes them, like, how do they break down a process, or how do they, what do they do across the course of a day that maybe someone else doesn't do, that makes them more, that optimizes their output, or, and he tries to find these things so that he can implement them and become more successful and share, also share those with people. And there's been a lot of tips on his show that I've really kind of picked up and gone, man, this is a really good tip, and used myself. And his latest episode is called How to Optimize Creative Output. And it's that, and then it says Jarvis versus Ferris. And I can't remember the guy's first name, the last name Jarvis. I can't remember the guy's first name. But it's basically them almost interviewing each other. It's mostly Jarvis interviewing Ferris. And they ask each other questions about the creative process, essentially how each of them does things because they're both successful guys. And one of the things that Tim Ferriss said is one of his ex-girlfriends, he's like, I know this sounds really hokey, but he's like, she used to make me, he's like, when I was really kind of depressed, he's like, she used to make me write down, anytime something awesome happened to me, I'd have to write it down and put it in the jar of awesomeness. He's like, and then when I would have, he's like, then when I would have like times when I would get kind of stuck creatively, or I was just having like a downward spiral kind of thing, I'd pull something or a couple somethings out of the jar of awesomeness to just remind myself that awesome things happened to me. And he goes, he's like, you realize that, you fill this jar up and realize awesome things happen to you like all the time. And it's basically about celebrating the small wins, essentially. Mm-hmm. And, so it's kind of funny when you mentioned that, because I was going to talk about this anyways, and it's very, on the same path. And I just read something else about journaling and basically doing the same thing. Anytime something good happens to you, write it down in your journal so that you could, have a reference point. Anytime you can't think of, man, when's the last time I had a win? Go back through your journal and go, oh, it was 2 days ago. It really hasn't been forever, because your mind wants to go to worst case scenario and, distorted thinking worksheet, cough, cough.
In distorted time. We distort time.
I'm just, that horse has just got boot marks in it. But this podcast, I'll have the link in the show notes, but I highly recommend people go listen to it. It's a really good episode. And these guys talk about other ways that they get around like creative block and stuff. Like they even talk about, Tim Ferriss talks about how, for, writers talk about how they should write X amount of words per day or this many pages. He tries to write 2 garbage pages a day. And basically, if he writes more than that, awesome. But if he can put 2 pages of journaling or just blogging or whatever, he counts that as a success. That's how small of a goal he has. That way, there's a good chance it's a win. And it's about the small goals. And then because a lot of times when you set your goal small, you'll eclipse it and you'll just keep going. Like getting on a treadmill, he was talking about getting on a treadmill, shoot for 5 minutes. Because you'll get on the treadmill, you'll hit 5 minutes and go, yeah, what the hell, stay on for a little longer. And next thing you know, you're on 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Yep. Instead of shooting for, I'm going to get on for an hour. Because a lot of times you'll view it ahead of time and go, I really don't feel like going for an hour. 5 minutes is something that whatever, I'll jump on, I'll be off of it real quick. And he's like, and if you do get off of it in 5 minutes, okay, you hit your goal. Mm-hmm. Worst case scenario, you've hit your goal for the day. And if you stay on longer, you've eclipsed your goal, kind of a thing. And it's this way you keep seeing yourself winning. And in the long run, you see win after win after win, and you'll start pushing yourself past your goals. You will motivate because it's easy to motivate past your goals at this point. And I was like, this, I think, is the way of thinking. I think this way of thinking will work for so many people. Because the daunting task of looking at the hour, or I have to write 10 pages today, or 500 words, or 1,000 words, or it seems like so much, but 2 pages of just gibberish seems like so much easier than I have to write 10 pages today, or whatever,
Well, don't they say the hardest exercise you'll ever do is pushing the door open of the gym?
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the motivation to walk in, yeah.
Exactly. If you can push the door open to your gym and walk inside, you've already accomplished the hardest exercise you're probably ever going to do.
Yeah.
That's the toughest one, the toughest hurdle.
I can see that. I mean, it's like, if you have something you need to talk to your doctor about, the hardest thing generally is actually going.
Yeah, making the appointment and going to the appointment.
Yeah, once I was there, I was like, oh, here's what I need to have help with.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there were a lot of tips in this episode, and there's a lot of tips in his show in general toward this kind of thinking, because he really is very, motivation and efficiency based. It's a lot of his stuff is based on just trying to help people be more successful at whatever it is they want to do. And if you've ever heard of the guy, he's known for, he wrote the books 4 Hour Body, the 4 Hour Work Week, and different stuff. There was another book, I think, was it the 4 Hour Chef, I think is the other one. And like I said, he's very much, he throws himself into things to learn things. And that's just, kind of what he does. And then he brings people on his podcast so you can learn about them. And, there's a lot of I don't listen to every one of his shows. There's been plenty I've skipped, but, I thought this one was really interesting. He had one the week before with Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. That was a very interesting one. There wasn't a ton of life lessons to learn, but it's just a really interesting one of how a guy with not a ton of discernible skills necessarily has made a very nice career for himself.
An amazing voice.
Yeah, just because he's willing to take a job.
Yeah.
He's just willing to do work, kind of a thing. So
we'll find that man does more voiceovers than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Because ever since I started, I watched his show a few times and really got tuned into his voice.
Yeah.
And now I hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
He's always, I can almost pick him out like you could pick out James Earl Jones,
Right.
I hear his voice, I'm like, that's the Dirty Jobs guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But I like I said, I thought it was interesting because I know a lot of people, anybody who's creative in any way, has some sort of a block at times. You know, you get stuck with stuff, and it doesn't even have to be creative, just anything in life. You know, again, like, you know, I know Heno's talked about it before about, you know, getting away from going to the gym, and then how do you motivate yourself going back, you know? And like I said, you know, this may work for some people, like, oh, let's, you know, maybe the 5-minute thing's a little small for you, but maybe you shoot for 15 minutes or whatever. You know, I know you've mentioned something very similar, I think, Heno, didn't you? Like going to the gym for like a short time instead. And then once you were there, you were like, you know, I'm going to do more or whatever.
Yeah, that's been, you know, up until I got sick this last week, that was what I've been doing is, you know, looking at it, you know, trying to just, once again, shift my way of thinking. Rather than saying, oh, I have to do an hour. Well, do what you can. You know, all right, I get to do 20 minutes. That's what I can. I have enough time to do 20 minutes. And then next time I'm in there, it was 30 minutes. And that's how I've done this. You know, this little piece of music I was wanting to learn, there were some days where I literally, like, I got up in the morning and I played the passage on my guitar 3 times through, and that was it. That's all I had time for. But I picked up the guitar and I got my hands working and I went through it. And I think that ties in with that, you know, that the idea of viewing these things as, you know, it doesn't have to be a perfect, it can just be a practice.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the whole idea with meditation that we talked about on that episode too, is it's just a matter of doing a little bit, because it's unfortunately the way we are wired, and it's a real, it's a very, it ties into our whole ideas of duality and everything. It's all or nothing, you know, I can't take this on unless I'm ready to win. And that kind of mentality, and not being okay with gray areas like we've talked about, and the middle is just fine sometimes,
right?
And that's what holds us back from accomplishing even anything. Yeah. And you know, to me, I posted it up on Facebook in my little Axhole's Lounge, which is that's another podcast, and it's a podcast about guys who play guitar, and it's, you know, it's geeking out on guitar, and I posted it on there because we post stuff up there all the time, and you know, it wasn't perfect, it's not amazing, but it was fun to say that I finally did it, and I literally did it like that, a little bit at a time.
Nice.
And some days it was only 20 or 30 minutes, and some days I would do it until I'd start feeling frustrated, or I'd start, you know, and I go, nope, that's enough. Because that's the other thing I've learned, especially with guitar playing. And it's funny how I don't apply this to the rest of my life. I have this thing where if I start working on something, so there's patterns, there's dexterity, there's coordination, there's all these things that are going on at the same time when I'm playing my guitar, especially if I'm doing something that's like a classical music piece or something like that. And something happens where I start trying too much and it stops working. Yeah. And I put it down and I pick it up 2 days later, and for some reason, all of a sudden there's this ability I didn't have that I just couldn't get to. And I've heard the same thing talked about with golf swings. I
was just going to say that. Yep. Yeah, athletes in general. Yep.
You need to let your brain marinate on this a little bit. Like something happens in our minds when there's accomplishment and there's work that happens when we're not thinking about it. But you have to put something down on paper first. You have to start something. And then you never know. You'll sit down. You'll have been away. What's weird for me is sometimes I'll pick up my guitar and I'm not even warmed up, and I'll play something better than I ever have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and it's because, you know, whatever, I'm not in bad habit, or I'm not, you know, I'm allowing just free flow to happen. And I think that really, I can apply that. I really need to. I need to look at how I can apply that to other parts of my life.
Yeah. It's about clearing the mechanism.
That's it.
It really is. It really is.
I use that at work a lot. Yeah. And it's so funny because, you know, I get mentioned, I have been learning a lot in the last week and a half. And it's so funny that I'll learn something one day and I'm like, okay, I think I got it. I don't know if I got it. You know, I just need more practice with it. And I'll be unsure. But the next day when I come back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got this. and it's like, it's like something about the brain. You kind of need to marinate it. It just needs to do its own thing for a while, step away from it. And when you come back to it, all of a sudden things look clearer.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how that works.
Done it so many times with art projects. I'm sure Henno's done it in songwriting. And it's funny, like, there's just times where you have to step away from, and it's funny because I have done that with stuff I've been drawing. I'll step away from it for a couple of days, or you write something, even when you're in school, but I don't know why I don't apply it to life. It's the same thing like you were saying, Henno. Like, why don't we step away from stuff sometimes in life and just go, you know what? I got to leave that alone for a minute. You know?
And I think that's what I guess, now that I'm talking about it, I guess I do it. I'm just not aware of it because I talk about it a lot where I share a lot about how I sit with something for a while and try not to think about it too much.
Yeah.
And I did that with this change for me this summer. And, I finally had somebody go up to me and say, "Hey, are you interested in playing some music for us this year?" I'm like, "Nope."
Right.
Jim was like, "What?" And he looked a little shocked. And he's a personal trainer and very health conscientious. I said, "No, I'm dealing with tinnitus and I want to give myself a break." He's like, "Oh wow, that sucks," and he was really great about it. But with that whole decision, there was a period where I did some active thinking, I did some writing, I did some pros and cons, but then I also made an active choice to just sit on it for a while and see what happens.
Yep.
And, a lot of people talk about, it's like, this is the difference. When I hear people say, "Oh, we prayed on it," like, to me, that's thinking. When I meditate on something, I'm not thinking about it. I'm like giving my brain, I like looking at it as the idea of, allowing the universe to give me, to help me get in the direction that I know.
Right.
It's actually, I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, who I've brought up on this podcast several times. And I was describing to him, kind of my spiritual beliefs. And I take a lot from Buddhism where, the best me is inside me. It's inside me. I just have to allow it to come up and out.
Yeah.
And sometimes just the non-reflection, the not thinking, the not doing that can allow me to actually get the answer I need. And because when I start to ponder something and really work it in my mind, I can talk myself into anything. Mm-hmm. And the right answers usually happen when I bounce ideas off of others, or I'm sitting quietly and I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you sit down and you talk with somebody else, a lot of times your mind is essentially made up and you just want someone to confirm you kind of where you want to go. Like, you're at like 70% or something like that. And you sit down with somebody and you're just like, you're talking to them. And a lot of times, at least I've gone through this where people are like, "Sounds like your mind's already made up." And you're like, "No, I just want to," and they're like, "It really sounds like your mind's made up," and you're like, you're like, "Oh, I would just want to bounce it off of someone else." And they're like, but it really, cause you'll talk heavily on one and you don't realize that you're kind of down talking the other decision, Yeah,
well, and that's something that ties in with that is because when I meet with one of my coaches and I sit down and I lay out an experience with him, I may mention the options I have.
Yeah.
But I tend to not go into a definitive solution because what happens a lot is he will say a word or a phrase or will just mention something. And if my mind is open, it might trigger me in a path that I did not think to go into.
Right.
And, and I think that's part of this process of being open for allowing, I think I personally, my ego gets in the way of my intuition.
Yeah.
And when I can pull my ego out, my intuition has a chance to kind of come up and help me do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that also applies with, we're talking about work and those tough situations is we need to give our intuition a chance. And it's one of the hardest places to do so because people are always trying to get in the way of it.
Well, yeah. Well, plus, right? your intuition whispers and your ego yells.
There you go. That's a great way of putting it.
I mean, seriously, your ego is constantly just, and your intuition's like, hey, maybe you should do this over here. And you're like, oh, what?
Ego is Tony when he's had too much to drink?
Yeah.
I was having a great conversation with my best friend the other day, and we were talking about relationships. And it was very interesting and not too far off of kind of what you guys are talking about, is we were talking about relationships and how do you know you're with the right person?
Mm.
And I said, everyone second guesses. And she's like, really? I'm like, yes. I said, I'm engaged and I still second guess. I wouldn't change my mind for the world, and not because, the dress has been bought and the hall's been paid for and all the other stuff. No, I know I'm with the right person. Will I still have that feeling in 20 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't say.
No.
But what I can say is that right now I ask myself a couple key questions. Is my life better with him in it? Do I like myself better when I'm with him? And if he wasn't in my life, would that make a difference to my life? And if I can answer those all in the positive, then that's telling me I'm in the right place right now.
Yeah.
And she's like, because she's with a wonderful, wonderful man, but is having some concerns about future.
Yeah.
And I said, but when you break it down and you start and you look at it from that angle and you really start taking it into the present and listening to what your life is telling you right now, all of that other stuff kind of falls away. And it's no longer about that. It's about that moment, and it's about being present, and it's being there in your life right now.
Yeah.
The rest kind of takes care of itself. And touching a little bit on that whole ego thing, it's interesting because when you stop and you really break it down to those levels and you stop in overanalyzing and you kind of give your brain a rest, all of a sudden things start becoming clear. You start to be able to tell the difference between heart and ego. You start to hear those inner voices, those quieter ones that maybe aren't as loud as others. Yeah. And it's like, how do I feel in this moment? How do I feel when I'm with this person? How do I feel when I'm at my job? And you start listening to yourself and what yourself is telling you. That's when you're really going to start making those decisions. I mean, another big thing for me is when I always say that the morning I wake up unhappy is the morning I begin to change. And that's really what it comes down to. It is that, if you wake up and you're unhappy, why are you unhappy? What do you need to change so that when you wake up, you are happy? And I think first thing in the morning, you can hear the inner voice is so much louder than probably any part of the day for me anyways.
Yeah.
Some people might be before they go to bed at night, but for me, it's first thing in the morning. I don't have the distractions. I don't have all the other things bounce around my head. I can just hear me and hear what makes me happy, what makes me tick. It's different, but if you can get in touch with yourself, it really makes a huge, huge difference. And I think it also increases your confidence in people. You'll start drawing positive people to you.
Yeah.
It's like everything starts to change, you know?
It's so true because think about the times when you're under a lot of stress, anxiety, you're not sleeping well, whether it is natural stressors like a life thing that's going on, or whether it might actually even be drug related, because I remember times when I was younger and I was staying up way too much and anxiety kicks in, and that voice that's in your head of doubt, the voice of fear, the voice of you're worthless,
Yeah.
the voice of you're a piece of, all that becomes so loud.
Yeah, it does.
And how do we hide that voice? We tend to surround ourselves with bad people and situations because we don't know how to calm it down when the reality is maybe we just need a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And then, when you finally get that one night's sleep and you wake up and you're like, oh wow, I feel a lot better now.
Yeah.
And don't look as bad as they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing how this, that we sit there and you can sit there and you go, wow, I just wasted 4 days sleeping. Well, maybe your brain needed the 4 days of sleep. That wasn't a waste. That was processing. That was getting yourself into the place where you need to be so that intuition can speak a little louder.
Right.
I think, this is a great topic in that regard.
Yeah.
Once again, to allow ourselves to be where we need to be and not fight it.
Yeah.
To give that stress response. I mean, that fight or flight response does so much more to us than just our brains. It affects us physically and in so many ways. And that's why I know Angela talks a lot about slowing down. And I like that because Sharon and I have been talking, I'm sorry, I'm about to just go off, but Sharon and I have been talking about, and my buddy Rick that I was talking to today, about these people that are just so freaking motivated. You're like, so a part of me wants to tell them, you're driving me nuts. It's like, mellow out. It's like, you can't possibly do this. But I have to sit there and say, hey, that's them. That's their world.
Yeah.
All I can look at is my world. And I go, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
I don't, that's a little bit too far for me. And I don't think it's for any of us to say, hey, you have to slow down.
Yeah. It's funny though, because it's amazing how many times in life lifes you and finds a way to slow you down. And I don't necessarily mean like heart attacks or any of that kind of stuff, but just something happens or you realize at some point because something, a divorce or your kids hate you or, something happens and you're like, wow, I've had my priorities in the wrong spot. On that Tim Ferriss podcast, I can't remember which one of the guys makes the comment. They were talking about how people are always so busy. And the one of them is like, yeah, like everybody I talk to is always so busy. And they were like, they're like, the way we are now, being busy is power. And,
that's a great
and
point.
As soon as I heard it, I actually had it in my notes for the show. And I don't usually have notes for this show. And I was like, I have to write that down because I wanted to bring that up. And we kind of got right to it. It's interesting how two of the things I had written down for this, we actually got to organically. And it happens so much. Yeah. And I was like, yes. I was like, and I've mentioned it before about how, I mentioned before about how instead of saying busy, say this is not a priority, kind of a thing. Like I'm too busy say this is not a priority to me. To help you kind of really look at what is and isn't a priority. But they mentioned that about how people like to feel busy because it makes them feel powerful or it makes them feel like they have power in their life. And as soon as they said that, I was like, yes, like it isn't that I identify with it. I just see it in so many people that it really is that you see them. And it's like, I think, you would love to grab, like you were saying, it's not up to us to slow people down, but you'd love to because you see them sometimes and you go, man, if I could just slow them down a little bit, you could see that you just would make their lives so much better, because you see people that are just almost miserable and you're like, I could help them, but all they need to do is just slow down a step and they'd be great. But it's not up to people to change other people's lives, but
it is up to us. Something that I read, the other day on Facebook that really rang some bells with me was a teacher was talking about the disservices we do to our children. And one of the disservices that we do to our children is not allow them to be bored. And I'm like, And the way he went on to explain, he's like, by not allowing kids to ever be bored, they don't know what to do when they have time on their hands and nothing to do. Mm-hmm. They were stunting their imagination. We're making them impatient. We're making them race around, and their brains are constantly running and stuff like that. They completely lose touch with the present, what's going on around them, and being in touch with themselves and being in touch with their world. And I stopped and I'm like, how true is that? Like, even as adults, we keep ourselves so busy, rushing, that we don't take that time. We don't know how it is. We don't know how to enjoy being bored.
Yeah. Yeah, because used to be, like, seriously, as a kid, if I got bored, I would honestly, my answer to boredom was always grab a book. Mm-hmm. That was always my answer, was if I didn't feel like playing, or if it was whatever and I was like, I'm bored, I would draw or I would get a book. Those were my answers. And now as an adult, I'm never, like, if I am bored, I notice what I end up doing is I'm probably simultaneously doing about 3 things. I'm probably on my phone with the TV on, or a podcast playing, and, probably, or I'm playing a video game with a podcast going, and occasionally checking my phone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there going, I'm really not fully engaged in anything, but I'm doing 3 things, kind of, And then I'm sitting there going, this really isn't stimulating. I'm just doing these things, so I'm not doing nothing.
It's the toughest thing to do. I mean, that's why we call it timeout, for people, for kids, because how tough is it for a kid just to sit in a chair and just be?
Oh, picture doing that to an adult now.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Can you imagine putting an adult in timeout for 15 minutes?
Yeah, just be.
Just go sit in a chair. Now, there are plenty of adults now. If you're a meditative person, you could just meditate. If someone was like told Henno, go sit in a chair for 15 minutes,
I'd totally just go meditate.
Yeah, he'd go meditate, right? And I would I'm not a meditator, I don't meditate, but I would try to do something like that. I would probably close my eyes and try to center myself, focus on my breathing. I would do that to try to get through it, basically. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that would just go crazy because my phone, they'd have and this is a show topic we have to do at some point, fear of missing out, or FOMO as it's called, because it's a great topic.
Yeah.
People have that fear. It's a legitimate thing that kids and adults have now, that they will miss an update in their, Facebook or Twitter group or Kick group or whatever. Someone will say something and you'll miss that, or you'll post something. You don't get that instant gratification, And, if you took away 15 minutes, I mean, oh my gosh, you've ruined someone socially,
Exactly.
I mean,
go ahead.
I'll say that just back to that idea of it being power, busy equals power.
Yeah.
When you're in a place where it's a competition.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It makes so much sense to me now, because it's everyone's trying to one up each other with how freaking busy they are.
Uh-huh.
It's this like little ego thing.
Right.
And, or whatever it is. I don't know if it's a lack of self-esteem or that means that, I mean, I personally, when people ask me, like, I'm like, no, I got nothing going.
No.
I'm like, I'd rather say I'm not busy at all.
Nope.
I'm not.
No.
I have lots of time.
Yeah.
I sit on the couch and do nothing.
Yep.
Just because I'm so sick, and I hear it at the gym all the time. People just like trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
With how, and all of the things their kids are doing and this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there going, who wants that?
I remember when we were in high school, how it was, they kept, like, the counselors were like, you need more extracurricular activities because it was good for your college entrance stuff. you know, and I was like, to me, I was always like, I'm going to an art school. I don't need that garbage. All I need is good grades in my art classes. You know, I need a portfolio in case I go to a school that makes you submit a portfolio. That's what I need. I don't need foreign languages. I don't need this. I've already scouted the schools I want to go to, basically. I already know exactly what I need. But there were so many kids that were like, I have to do this, I have to do this, and I was like, this is horrible. Like, these kids have no time after school because they're in like 14 things. They have to do sports and clubs and volunteer work and all this. So they have a diverse resume essentially for a college, you know, and then while they're in college, they have to keep doing this along with their work. And it's like, and now those kids have become adults that have that whole busy mentality, and now their kids have to be busy all the time because they're in like 14 different things. And it's like, ugh, you know, I'm so glad I never bought into that mentality because it just would never work for me. And it's not that I was never a highly motivated person, because I always got my work done. I always did extra credit stuff all through college. I did all my work. I got all that, you know, and I always worked over hours and all this stuff. I volunteered for, you know, it was just, I was just like, I'm doing this on my terms, not because this says I have to. And I just, I can't imagine that. I've seen so many people with, you know, oh, my kid's got this on Monday, this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday. And it's just like, when do you get to, when is your life? You know, like, it sounds to me like all you are is a taxi. Like, that sounds horrible. Like, that sounds like the worst existence, you know, like, I'm sorry. Even if they don't have kids, I have this for work, or I have this, and it's like, ugh, you know, like, it just sounds horrible. Like, living your life only to just run and do things just so you can brag how busy you are, just sounds terrible. It just,
I can't imagine that you're gonna enjoy everything fully.
No, how could you?
You know, yeah, it's like, I don't know how you could really enjoy everything.
Yeah.
You know, the rule in our household was one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So there was my brother and I, just the two of us. And we each got to pick one extracurricular thing that we were doing. And that's it.
Yeah.
So, you know, for him, a lot of it was karate. For me, a lot of times it was dance. Or, you know, we both took turns in plays and musicals and stuff. But it was always one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Not one thing per semester or whatever. No, one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And what you did, you devoted yourself to it. You did the best you possibly could. You practiced. You did whatever you needed to do to, you know, make your skills better. And it didn't matter what it was. I took up the guitar for a short time and did that. But I was not going to be doing guitar and dance and musicals and like, no.
Yeah.
One, my mom point blank told me, she's like, I cannot spend the time or the energy running you guys everywhere.
Right.
It's just not happening.
Yep.
You know, and she's like, and second, you guys need to have downtime. You guys need to have, you know, time to do your schoolwork, time to do different things.
Yeah.
You're not filling your day from sun up to sundown with stuff.
Right. That's always been my thing. It's like, kids need structure. I get that, but kids don't need that. I don't think kids need that. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, whatever. But I just don't think kids need, you know, morning till bedtime structure. I think you just need time to just be a kid and just do what you're going to do and, you know, whatever.
Be bored.
Yeah. There's time to just be a mindless automaton when you're an adult, you know?
And I think to kind of buttonhole this and circle it back to a big old pretty bow.
Yeah.
I think everything that we've kind of deviated from and all the different tangents we went on all comes back to the basic principle of taking some time, be quiet, getting good sleep, listening to your body, listening to your inner voices, and just being present in that moment and being comfortable and confident in who you are in the life that you want to live. Because it just seems like everything that we've kind of talked about, how we want to raise our kids, how we want to raise ourselves, is, have that meditation. Take your time away from the difficult craziness that is life and learning and growing and changing, and make sure you listen and let yourself process it. And pretty soon you'll become more confident in what you're doing, and life will just go smoother.
Yep, that's what I've been told.
Yep.
Something like that anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Works for me.
Well, that being said, I think we've reached our hour mark.
Yep.
And so, if you want to continue the conversation, which I would love, love, love to hear from you, you can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. You can also shoot us an email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com, or shoot us a message through our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. Henno, how can they get in touch with you?
Find me on Twitter at IdaHenno, and you can also find me on Facebook. Just type in my name, Henno Heicher, and you will find me there, or send me a message.
And you, Brian?
You can also find the show on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod, where I post when the new episodes drop. Although you should already be subscribed to the show anyway, and, if you would, please go rate us and subscribe to us and leave us a review, however it is that you found us, because that helps other people find us and raises us up in their visibilities and different stuff. So please do that. You can also find the show on, we have a Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/Crazy Life Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast, Salty Language, at salty_language. Or at saltylanguage.com. You can also find us over at thetangentboundnetwork.com and on wickedradionetwork.com. So please go give them a look-see and, check us out over there. They're fine networks, obviously, because we're part of them. And
Awesome.
Also, I wanted to real quickly mention that this month, last week I mentioned NAMI, which is I forgot what it is now. The National, I can't remember what it is now. It's the National Alliance of Mental Illness, I think it is. I may have...
North America? No.
Yeah, I hope I didn't get that wrong.
You're right.
Okay, we'll go with it. Anyway, they have, this month, they are doing a mental health month on their website, and they have different articles, and they are sponsoring walks and different stuff all through the month. I know it's kind of late in the month. I didn't realize it until just the other day. So if you go to NAMI, which is NAMI.org/mental health month, they have different ways you can get involved or just read their articles that they're posting, as well as, or follow them on Twitter at NAMI Communicate, and check that out. They're a pretty neat organization anyway, as they help people, find therapists and just post things about mental illness as well. And then, as always, I'll remind you that we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals, counselors, anything of that ilk. We're just three folks dealing with our own issues, and we're just trying to help in any way that we can. So please don't self-diagnose. If you need help, please go seek out a professional. And if, look for help in your area through different ways. On the Facebook group page under files, there's different ways if you do need help to locate, therapists or different things in your area. There's a good amount of links there that I've posted. And if you are feeling suicidal, please do not act on that. Even if you're planning, if you found yourself in the planning stages, please reach out to somebody, because that is just as dangerous as if you're in the next step of the stage, or in the next step of the process. Call 911, tell them you're having a mental health emergency, reach out to a friend, call the suicide prevention hotline number, text, I forgot it. Was it 741-741, I believe it is, and talk to someone through that measure. Again, the links are on our Facebook group, if you need help in that way also. But just please don't be alone. And please, please don't act on your thoughts.
Absolutely. Remember, as we've mentioned many, many times on here, that mental illness relies on you being alone, and it preys on it. It's what feeds it. So don't be alone. Don't give in to your loneliness. Seek out others. Seek out help whenever you possibly can. And ultimately, when life gets really, really tough, break it down to the very, very basics. Just keep breathing. Breathe in, breathe out, and you'll make it to the next minute. So, till next week, keep breathing, everyone. Have a great week.